Okay, we're going to get started. I'm Laurel Wood. My title is Business Continuity Coordinator, and I work here in the Division of Crisis Management and Preparedness. We are a division of UK Police. And Azetta approached me a couple months ago, eager to host a lunch and learn on this topic. And our hope is to offer more lunch and learns on related topics such as this. I'll let Clayton introduce himself.
Thanks, Laurel. My name is Clayton Oliver. I am an emergency management specialist here, also with UKPD's Division of Crisis Management and Preparedness. I've been with UK about a year and a half. Prior to that, I spent about 3.5 years with Fayette County Emergency Management doing emergency planning related to the chemical weapons depot that the Army maintains down in Richmond. Prior to that, I had about 5 years of volunteer experience with Fayette County Emergency Management, so I've been doing disasters for a little bit now, and that's really the elevator pitch for my job is disasters.
So, what keeps you up at night? What is your worst case scenario? It doesn't have to be related to natural disasters. You all do have microphones on your tables. If you see the red glowing lights, Tom, can you make sure the microphones are enabled? We want to make sure that you use the microphones so that our Zoom participants can also hear your questions. Raise your hand. What's your worst case scenario? Anyone? Fire? At home? At work? What is it? Fire at both places. Yeah. Evacuating a fire. A flood. I know we all live in a variety of different places. I'm not worried about flood because I live at a high elevation. I'm more worried about earthquake at my home. What is it, John? UK helicopter crash in his backyard. What else we got? Home invasion. Yeah, all excellent examples of worst case scenario. Well, hopefully we're going to give you, we only have an hour, and we could both go on and on about how you can prepare for your worst case scenario, but we're going to do the best we can in the hour given, and hopefully you walk away with a sense of a little bit more preparedness for not only for yourself, but for your family and your coworkers as well.
Next slide, please. Thank you. So this being a public safety meeting held by a public safety agency, we would be remiss if we did not give you some public safety information to start the meeting off. So here's your safety briefing. If we have to evacuate this room due to a fire alarm or other condition, please exit the room through the 2 doors through which we entered here. Take an immediate left. Proceed straight through the next 2 doors. That'll put you at the head of the fire stairs that let out to the loading dock on the east side of the building. If that exit route is blocked for whatever reason, exit this room, go right, proceed to the main stairs that most of you entered through, and exit the building that way. Should we need to take shelter due to a severe weather emergency, we will all proceed downstairs and into the backstage area of the food service areas downstairs and see if there's enough room in the walk-in freezers for us to all pack into. Should we have an active aggressor or a similar situation, Captain Matlock will deal with that. We have provided light refreshments. We have bottled water and chips on the table at the back of the room. For those of you joining us online today, I apologize. We were not able to arrange Uber Eats delivery of snacks to you this time, possibly next session. We do also, for those of you who did not bring lunch, when we're done with today's presentation, if you're not familiar with the South Campus dining options, we have a variety downstairs in this building. Encourage you to try those out on behalf of our partners at Aramark. Sponsorship box checked. We do have restrooms in the crisis management suite here. Again, exit the room through those doors, take a right. They'll be immediately in front of you at the end of the hall. I know a lot of us are busy. A lot of us are on call pretty much all the time. We do ask, if you can, please silence your cell phones. If you need to take a call, please step outside. The conference room immediately adjacent to this room is available if you need to take a call in private. And finally, as Laurel noted earlier, We do have colleagues joining us online today via Zoom so that they can hear both sides of the dialogue. If you do have a question before speaking, tap one of the red glowing microphones on the table in front of you. It'll turn green, indicating that the mic is live. Please then do tap it again to mute it and switch it back to red when you're finished. Thank you very much. Next slide, and over to Laurel.
Okay, how many control freaks do we have in the room? I'm one of them. Oh, good. This is great. You can't control everything that happens to you, believe it or not. You just can't. But we can control how you react to the things that are out of your control. And one of those being disasters. Disasters are going to happen no matter what. We don't know the size of the disaster or the implications from it, or how long it's going to affect us or our families. But we can certainly mitigate the effects that they have on us individually and our families. Next slide. So when I try to think of all the things that stress me out, in addition to work, and all the lists that I have to make in my head and on paper, and those that don't necessarily make it to an organized list, what we want you to take away from today is the list has already been made for you. This is not a to-do list. One more thing that you have to accomplish. It's something that you should incorporate into your daily lives. Something that you should incorporate into your meal times with your family members. Things that you can buy at the grocery store when you're already there to stock up on your emergency supply list. So what our goal is today is to take the mental load of disaster planning off your shoulders and give you a step-by-step guide on things that you can do to keep everyone in your family prepared. So we've got work deadlines, we've got household chores, repairs, keeping your grocery and toiletries stocked. I think I do a majority of these things for my family, actually. Paying for childcare and elder care, extracurricular activities. I'm always the one in my family who has to remember the birthdays and anniversaries and buy the cards and the gifts. And I call myself the family memory maker. I always try to schedule things that make memories for my family. I always have to schedule even downtime because sometimes I even overcommit us to making memories. And last but not least, your personal finances. These are all things that can impact your disaster planning as well. Next slide.
So when we talk about personal home, family, household preparedness, we have four main steps to that. The first is being informed, and that has two aspects. First, knowing how local emergency authorities will alert you in case there is a disaster or an imminent threat. And second, having a general awareness of what may happen around you, at home, at work, in your community, so you can prepare accordingly. Second step is having a plan. Obviously, we can't plan effectively until we know what we're planning for, which is why this is not first. Third is equipping, having the tools necessary to carry out that plan. If you don't already have them in your house, you may be surprised at what you already have around you that is relevant to this. And the fourth item is getting involved, which is continuing your training and becoming part of a broader community preparedness initiative, because we don't do well on our own. Regardless of what Hollywood may tell us, the last man on earth is not a good place to be. We'd much rather be in a survivor community than trying to scrounge through the rubble on our own. So with that, we'll break those down in a little bit more detail, starting with being informed.
In disaster planning, we like to approach it with an all hazards concept. It's very difficult to plan for every single scenario that can affect you. You can what if yourself all day, but when it comes down to it, you need to plan for all hazards, including natural hazards, even technological events such as power outages and communications failures, which happens a lot on our campus. Man-made events like terrorism and civil disturbance or a home break-in, and even hazardous materials. There are a lot of hazardous materials that surround us in this campus and even come through freight and the interstate thoroughfares. So it's important to be informed and realistic about the hazards that surround you. Next slide.
And when I talk about preparedness, one of the big principles I like to put forth is you are your own first responder. Now, that sounds sort of tautological. Obviously, if you are in a disaster, you're already there. Therefore, you are the one who is first on scene and capable of responding. But the deeper truth here is that what defines a disaster, what makes a disaster different from an emergency, is that we have emergencies in this city, on this campus, every day. And an emergency is a situation in which there is an immediate threat to human life, human health, or property in the environment. A disaster has those characteristics, but a disaster also is large enough in scope, scale, or complexity that the available professional response resources, whether that's police, fire, EMS, or other assets, are not able to immediately address all of the impacts of the disaster. So in a disaster situation, we may be on our own for minutes, hours, possibly even days in a significantly severe incident. Now, the days is more likely in places that have large-scale natural hazards like seismic or geological hazards. California, looking at you, you're always on fire or falling into the ocean. But we still may be on our own for several hours before professional responders can get to us. So it's incumbent upon us to be able to take care of ourselves during those initial hours, and also to be able to take care of the people who rely on us, whether that's children, elders we care for those of us who have public safety roles in this room, the Emergency Operations Center here, during a disaster that affects campus. That's also our campus community, our students, and our fellow faculty and staff.
I'm going to read off a statistic. And does anyone remember the CATS survey, the Campus Attitudes Towards Safety? It's done, I think it's been done twice, I believe. And the most recent survey said this: most students believe UK is safe, but too many believe that safety was not their own responsibility. In fact, more than 60% of students thought safety was not their own responsibility, but someone else's. Does anyone find that surprising or alarming? Alarming. Yeah. So in everything we do, in every encounter we make, not only with students, but with faculty and staff, we try to emphasize personal responsibility. Take responsibility for everything in your life, including preparedness.
So when we talk about being informed, we already talked about the range of possible hazards that we need to be thinking about that can affect us here on campus or in central Kentucky in the Bluegrass region. The other half of that, as I mentioned earlier, is knowing the warning methods that authorities are going to use to get information out to you if there is something you need to do to protect yourself. Now, in Fayette County, we have several standard warning systems that either local or state authorities will use to push information out to us, and in some cases, federal authorities. The first of these is a NOAA All Hazards Weather Radio. You may have seen these on end cap displays in Kroger or Target or Walmart every year around February, March, run up to tornado season. And there's a reason these get promoted during that time of year especially. How a NOAA weather radio works is you take it home, you plug it in, you put some batteries in it to serve as backup power if your power goes out, and then you set it for your county of residence. For most of us, that's going to be Fayette. And then you leave it there. And every week on Wednesday, it'll probably go off while you're away at work, at school, and the cats will be very startled to hear a piercing electronic shriek followed by a recorded voice. However, when the National Weather Service issues a watch or a warning message for imminent severe weather, whether that is a thunderstorm, a tornado, severe winter weather, which hopefully, knock on wood, we won't have this year, but you're usually not severe. So regardless of what the weather hazard is, the National Weather Service will broadcast a specific encoded radio message that will cause this weather radio to activate. When it does so, you will again get the ear-piercing squeal. If you are asleep, you will levitate about 2 feet off the bed. The cats will immediately flee under the bed with their tails bottle brushed up. Speaking from experience on this, I've been run over by fleeing cats before. And then you will get that lovely electronic voice telling you that the National Weather Service has issued a severe blank watch or warning for your area for the next however long. It'll tell you what the hazard is. Basically, this is your smoke detector for severe weather. How many people in the room have a smoke detector at home? Excellent. How many of you check the batteries regularly? Very good. How many of you have weather radios at home? Okay, few, not as many hands, guys. This is probably the single most important piece of safety equipment you can have in terms of severe weather in Kentucky. Because we have tornadoes come through here every year. Fayette County has been hit by EF1, EF2, EF3 tornadoes before within living memory. And statistical data from the National Weather Service shows that the number of tornadoes occurring in the so-called tornado alley in the Midwest is decreasing, while we are getting more tornadoes every year in the Southeast, of which Kentucky is considered a part. So beyond the NOAA weather radio, Lexington also maintains a network of outdoor warning sirens. And we specify these are outdoor because they're not meant to alert you in your house. If we had a siren in every city park in Kentucky, in Lexington, that was loud enough for you to hear in your house, the effects on people outdoors when that turned on would probably be fairly painful. So they don't crank the volume up that high. The outdoor warning sirens are primarily intended to alert people who are in city parks or outdoors in the general vicinity of severe weather or other emergencies. Those also get tested once a month, but they will be set off when there is a tornado warning or a severe thunderstorm warning. Beyond that, there are many commercial smartphone apps that are available. I encourage you to read some reviews, pick one that works for you. You can set those to give you severe weather warnings, not only for your own location, but also for other areas. If you want to be aware of what's going on, if you have loved ones who live in Florida, for example, you may want to set that up to give you warnings for where they live during hurricane season. And finally, last but definitely not least, local television and radio stations do still broadcast severe weather coverage whenever there is a watch or a warning issued. Now, the TV stations will at times emphasize it a little more than the National Weather Service does because, we'll be honest, they are competing for ratings here. But if they are covering something, that means there is an imminent threat because those meteorologists take it every bit as seriously as we do in this office. Next slide, please.
Okay, who is familiar with UK Alert? Please tell me all of you are and are signed up. Okay, it's pretty easy to edit your account under My UK. You can choose whether or not you want to receive notifications on your smartphone, if you want to receive voice, text, and or text. You can, you also get a UK Alert via your university email. Some phones, some voice over internet protocol VoIP phones are equipped to handle or receive UK alerts, as well as our outdoor sirens, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. But UK Alert is meant to alert you when you need to take immediate action, such as a tornado warning where you need to take shelter, or an active shooter. So it will always give you the warning, the time, and instructions on what to do to act on that alert. Does anyone have any questions about UK Alert? Okay. As for the outdoor warning sirens on campus, Clayton touched on the city outdoor warning sirens. These are a little bit different. Many of you remember those brown phones that were all across campus. Those only had one capability, and that was reaching dispatch at the touch of a button. So it would immediately call 911 when you would push that red panic button. Now these blue outdoor warning notification towers have a lot more capabilities, such as the camera on the top. This picture doesn't really show the camera, but there's a about a 360-degree camera that's mounted on the very top, right below the light. The light is always illuminated and it flashes in times of emergency. We test these phones twice a year. It also has the wide area notification capability, so it's got those outdoor speakers. So this map shows about 40 blue phones all across campus. You'll see the blue dots are the locations, and the little bit lighter shade of circle, I know it's kind of hard to see, shows the area that it covers. So you can hear these. The environmental noise certainly has an impact on where you can hear these, and just like Clayton said, these are not meant to be heard indoors. So rely on your weather radio to be warned indoors. And Live Safe. Is anyone familiar with Live Safe, the app? Great. LiveSafe has a lot of capabilities, including the ability to report tips directly to our police dispatch. It's a two-way communication. They can reply right back to you. You can submit picture tips, video tips, audio tips, and you could do so anonymously if you wish. It also has the emergency options capability. You can click on the emergency options button. It will pull up different options for contacting 911. Whether you push 911, that will go to our city's 911 dispatch center. You can click contact campus police, and that will go to our dispatch center here on campus at our police department. UK resources. This is a really good guide for what to do in any type of emergency. So if you can't remember the procedures for properly taking shelter in a tornado, it outlines those procedures. And it outlines just about every natural hazard and even man-made hazard on there, the procedures on what to do. And sometimes we realize when you're panicked, you're not the best decision maker and you can't really think of common sense things to do. It kind of leaves us when it comes time to make a decision. And lastly, go back one more slide, the Go Safe tip or the Go Safe. This is kind of like a buddy walk. You can ask, so for example, I'm leaving work late at night. I've been working my butt off all day. And I want my husband to watch me walk from my office to my car. It's dark. He can virtually watch me as a dot move across the map as I go from my office to my car. A lot of people use that capability, and I think that's one of the best things about this app. Okay, next slide. Our next section, that was kind of one of our longest sections. Our next section focuses on making a plan, and here we're going to talk about developing a communications plan for your family, creating a shelter-in-place plan, creating a plan to get away, and finally knowing your plans at school and at work.
We're getting pretty good at this microphone handoff thing. Maybe we need to start throwing some kung fu moves in there. Okay, so family communications plan. There are a couple of aspects to this, but the overarching principle is that we want to have plans in place to let our loved ones know that we're okay and to ascertain their status if our normal communication methods fail on us. Now, most of the time, our cellular network is pretty reliable, as are our landline phones. In a major disaster, however, if we have a widespread loss of power, while most cell towers do have emergency generators, those are only fueled for between 24 and 72 hours. So if the cell companies can't get to those towers to refuel them, those towers start dropping offline, we start losing cell coverage, and suddenly our main means of communication here in 2018 is cut off. Likewise, both cell towers and landline circuits can be overwhelmed by the number of calls that are generated in a large-scale disaster. So we want a couple of alternatives here. Now, the first alternative is having a check-in point where we can all call in and leave messages for one another, as well as leaving messages for loved ones. Now, Facebook is pretty good for this, but again, that relies on us having internet access. Again, the cell network's down, internet access is going to be kind of sketchy on this, and landline service is also not guaranteed. So what we want to do is take a look at how the cell network operates. The cellular system in switching calls handles local calls and out-of-state or out-of-area code calls differently. So many times, if the cell network is overwhelmed locally, we may still be able to get a long-distance call out. So what we want to do is designate somebody, a close friend or a family member, who lives outside Lexington, preferably outside Kentucky, as our emergency check-in point. Make sure everyone in the household has that person's phone number programmed into their phones, and if we can't get calls out to one another, we can call that emergency contact and use them as a message relay hub. However, when you do this, be sure to tell that person that you have designated them as your emergency contact. Otherwise, they're going to be very confused when they start getting those calls. The second aspect of this, sorry, Laurel, the second aspect of this is we want to have a way to link up if we don't have local communication at all. And this is one where you look at your circumstances, you look at who in your household you want to be able to recontact. The system that my wife and I use, especially when we're traveling, is if something happens and we're separated from one another, we agree to meet back at the last place we spoke. If we can't get there, we meet at the last place we shared a meal together. If we can't meet there, we meet at the last place we slept. So we've got a primary, an alternate, and a contingency meeting point in case we need to reunite. And hopefully both of us will remember, okay, where did we last eat together? Most of us do remember where we had breakfast that day. I'm a little hazy on that sometimes because it takes a while for the caffeine to take hold, but usually I can remember that. So take a look at both of those and work those into your family communication plan along with.
Go back one more slide, Izetta. Sorry. I'm here to give you the mom perspective of a family communications plan. I have 2 young children. I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. So sometimes communicating the rules is difficult for young children. They don't always understand. So my 5-year-old is just now learning to read. So we practice what mommy's full name is. You'd be surprised at kids who don't know their parents' full name other than mommy and daddy. We practice my phone number. I have a different area code than most people, so we practice that usually on our commutes. And also, we try to emphasize where to meet up if the house was on fire. I tell him not to grab his toys, run straight out the door. If that door, go to another door, or in another door. Where we meet outside, a meetup spot near the house, such as there's a tree that we always decorate for Easter. He knows to go to the Easter egg tree or the neighbor's house. We also identify a spot outside of our house, like the neighborhood playground. And he's not really old enough to do this yet, but a site that's just outside of our neighborhood. I don't want him to do that just yet, but when he gets older. And it's also really important for them to hear a smoke detector go off in their house so that they recognize it when they hear it. So include them in testing of your smoke detectors, because I don't know if you've seen the videos of children sleeping through smoke detectors. It's something about the high pitch that children can't always hear, but if they know the sound of it and recognize what that means, they can act on it.
Okay, so the next thing we want to plan for is sheltering in place. And this is one, those of us who work in the chemical hazards community twitch a little bit when the media says shelter in place because they mean different things based on the circumstances at hand. What I'm going to talk about today is specific to chemical hazardous material. Things we may have occur in our community as a result of transportation or industrial accidents, pipeline incidents, or for those of us who live in Madison or Estill County, incidents regarding Bluegrass Army Depot. But regardless of the source of the incident, when we're sheltering in place, we're trying to protect ourselves from some sort of airborne or liquid chemical hazard. So what we want to do is emulate the turtle and keep the bad stuff outside our shell. So to do this, if we are advised of a chemical hazard and we are told to shelter in place, we want to isolate ourselves from outside air. There are a couple of things we do to accomplish that. First off, we go to the highest accessible level of the building that we're in. We go to the top floor because if the chemical is heavier than air, as it infiltrates the building, it's going to pool on the ground floor in the basement first. So we're going to get as far away from it as possible. Lower concentrations will occur at higher elevations. If the chemical is lighter than air, we don't really need to worry about it because it's going to rise above rooftop and treetop level and then be dissipated by the prevailing winds. But we don't know what we're dealing with in most cases, so we assume we have a heavier than air hazard. Once we're on the top floor of the building, we want to select an interior room or a room with as limited of outside access as possible. We want to seal ourselves off as much as we can from outside air. So duct tape, plastic sheeting, wet towels, whatever you have available, into the cracks under the doors, cracks in the windows, and any vents that are in the room. We also want to turn off the building's HVAC system, heating, ventilation, air conditioning system, so it won't draw outside air into the building. We want to maintain that inside air, which is cleaner, as long as possible. And finally, once we've done all that and we've turtled up in our safe room on the top floor of the building, we want to listen to local radio and monitor the situation as best we can via social media or whatever other communication avenues are open to us, so we know when the all clear has been issued and we can exit our shelter-in-place contingency. Next slide, please. So that's if we need to shelter in place from a chemical hazard that's outside. If we need to leave the building because of a hazard that's in the building with us, whether that's a chemical hazard, a fire hazard, or something else, we want to evacuate. Now, when I do a slightly different presentation, I like to quote from Ronin, and I need to find another film to quote from because Ronin is getting old enough that a lot of my student audience, especially, has never seen it. Pretty good espionage film. Yeah, we'll talk. We need to educate you in the classics. But one of the quotes I use from Ronin is when De Niro's character remarks, "I never walk into a place I don't know how to walk out of." And that level of preparation is equally important for all of us. When you walk into a place, especially if it's a new place you've never been in before, a restaurant, especially a hotel room, take 15 seconds as you're walking in to assess your surroundings and figure out, if I had to leave this place in an emergency, how am I going to get out? If you're in a hotel room, take a look at that plaque that's on the back of every hotel room door according to the fire marshal's requirements for that state. That'll show you what your evacuation routes are for that room and that hotel floor. If you're in a restaurant, take a look at the door to the kitchen. Think about, if you have to, exiting that way rather than out the door you came in. Because what we see in evacuation studies, particularly out of the fire science side of public safety, is that in a fire evacuation or similar evacuation, 80 to 90% of people will leave the building through the exit they use to enter it, even if there is another exit that is closer or safer for them to use. And this creates a significant amount of congestion in that exodus that can lead to both trampling situations and potentially people getting trapped in that building. So we want to be looking for what's my primary and what's my secondary, just as I briefed us on when we came in at the beginning of the meeting. Next slide, please.
Making a plan to get away doesn't just stop at home and at restaurants. It also extends to places that your family frequents, such as daycares or nursing homes, or even, what was I just thinking of? Church. Church is a big one for us. We have 2 kids that are in childcare during the week and during church service. And it's really important for me to understand what their plans are for sheltering and evacuating. And I've even volunteered my time to give them better advice than what I think they're delivering. So, what was I going to say? Knowing what those plans are, no matter if they apply to you or your family, is extremely important. Getting a kit. We're on number 3 now of our 4 concepts. So we've displayed a family emergency kit on this table over here to my left. The family emergency kit is on the right side. This includes a number of recommended items, such as these are non-perishable items, of course, so you would have to add the perishable items such as food and water. But water is recommended. You're supposed to store at least 1 gallon per person per day, and we recommend probably at least a 3-day supply of water. In addition to non-perishable food, you'll also want to have a radio that's either hand crank or battery powered, a flashlight with extra batteries, a first aid kit, a whistle and a dust mask, baby wipes and garbage bags. We like to buy the Costco size of baby wipes at our house. A wrench and pliers. Oh, sorry. Okay. Can opener. How about a can opener? Can opener. And maybe some local maps. Okay, next slide. I think there's a few more on the next slide. Some additional items to consider would be prescription medications, glasses, contacts, infant diaper needs. Don't forget your pets. Have enough food and water for your pets as well. Family documentation such as maybe passports or birth certificates or insurance cards, bank account information. Don't forget the cash. If you're like me, I never carry cash. What is the recommendation you have on cash, Clayton? I know you always have a spiel about that. Sorry.
Microphone swap. My general recommendation on cash is enough to get you through 2 nights at local hotel rates in case you need to evacuate your house.
First aid reference book. There's a lot of things I don't know how to do, but if given the right instructions, I could probably do it. Sleeping bags and blankets for each person, a change of clothes and shoes, household bleach. I think we said fire extinguisher, matches, Personal hygiene items, paper products, this keeps the place sanitary, and you don't have to wash dishes. Sometimes that works for busy nights at home as well. It's hard not for me, it's hard not to think about the stuff that's in my emergency kit when I run out at home. Like, oh, I'm out of paper towels. Maybe I should just go down to my emergency kit and get a roll of paper towels, but I try to leave it alone. Paper and pencil to document things, and activities for children. My kids, when they're not really plugged into technology just yet, but they like coloring, Play-Doh, stamps, different activities that they can get their hands on.
I also like coloring and Play-Doh, but I'm not really allowed to play with them. So when we're talking about our home emergency kit, by preference, this is something that we want to use in our homes, right? We don't want to leave our homes if we can avoid it. Our homes are significant investments. They're where we keep all our stuff. I have a very nice small room in the basement where my wife allows me to keep all my stuff. The rest of the house is hers. I have about 20 square feet down there. It's cozy. But we may have times when we have to leave our homes because the threat is immediate in our vicinity. And when we get that knock at the door at 2:30 in the morning and a firefighter says your house is about to burn down because there are gas leaks throughout your neighborhood, like we recently saw in Massachusetts, or when a police officer knocks at the door at 2:30 and says you need to leave because floodwaters are rising, as we see periodically throughout the country and even in places in Kentucky, we want to be able to evacuate our homes as quickly as possible. We may have 5 minutes before we have to leave if we want to ensure our own safety and that of our families. So rather than scrambling around and trying to get all of the supplies to our family emergency kit, which in many cases are things we use every day so we don't keep them sealed away in a tote under the stairs, we have them out in the kitchen, in the garage, where have you, we want to have a separate bag that we can grab and go if we have to leave right the heck now. Now that go kit is going to depend, the contents of that go kit are going to depend on the nature of your family and what your preparations are. If you have an evacuation plan that says, if I have to evacuate, I'm going to go out to my home in the mountains, that's great. Stock what you will need to get you to the home in the mountains. If you have a family member in the vicinity and your evacuation plan is, if I have to evacuate my house, I'm going to go stay with grandmom in Louisville for a few days, then stock your go kit with what you will need to get to grandmom and live with her on the couch for a few days without imposing too much on her hospitality. However, if you don't have a predefined evacuation location, strongly recommend taking what you need, stocking that go kit in advance for a few days in a hotel or, in a worst case scenario, an American Red Cross shelter. Now, I'm not going to give you a full list of that. First off, in many cases, the list is going to duplicate what's in your family emergency kit. Second off, your kit is specific to your needs. We have a saying in the public safety community, mission drives equipment. What that means is if we get a pro card or a bonus check or whatever, or if we're just getting ready to build our first emergency kit, it's very easy to get overwhelmed with purchasing cool stuff. There's a lot of cool stuff on the internet. Who is familiar with the internet being full of cool stuff, right? Hands are going up. But we want to temper our spending to make sure that whatever we're stocking our home kit and our go kit with, it's relevant to our situation, and we know how to use it, and we know how to maintain it. And when we go buy all that cool stuff, we want to take it out of the packaging and test it to make sure it works and get ourselves familiar with it. By way of example, do not be me in the 2009 ice storm, sitting in my kitchen at 9 o'clock at night using a battery-powered headlamp to unbox and fuel my new kerosene heater. That was not a good situation. Don't do that. Prepare yourself ahead of time. Make sure you know how to use what you got.
We're going to move on to the fourth and final section of this presentation, and it's called Get Involved. Okay, Campus or Community Emergency Response Team. This is a federal curriculum based on helping yourself and your family and others in your community if there's a widespread disaster and first responders can't always get to you hours, maybe even days, maybe even a week. If there's a mass casualty or widespread disaster that affects not only Lexington, but maybe the entire region of Kentucky and surrounding states. So it teaches you to be your own first responder. It also teaches you your own capabilities and what not to do. to wait for professionals to come to do. So that's just as important as knowing what to do as it is to what not to do. So the CERT curriculum is based on 6 concepts: fire, safety, and suppression, including what fires you shouldn't try to suppress with a fire extinguisher; light search and rescue; disaster medical operations. This is kind of like an advanced first aid; team organization; disaster psychology; and even terrorism. So about a little over 5 years ago, the police chief approached our division and said he wanted to create a campus community emergency response team. There are actually at least 4 graduates in this room. Raise your hand. 2 recent graduates. 5. There's 5. There's 5 of you. 2 recent graduates who graduated just Tuesday. And after the classroom material was presented to them, their graduation ceremony consisted of a mock disaster exercise that we held right out here in the Kerwin-Blanding complex. So it was a mock earthquake. They responded to the earthquake as a team. They addressed all the volunteer victims that we had. And this is the 5th year that we've offered this CERT training. It's for faculty and staff. And at this point, we have about 100 faculty and staff that are trained to serve as kind of a force multiplier for UK police when a disaster impacts campus. Next slide. So we have UK Campus CERT, and we also have the Lexington Fayette County CERT program. So I'm going to go over the UK Campus CERT program, and I'll hand it over to Clayton, and we'll talk about the differences. I think we're a complement to each other. Each program is very similar, but also very unique. We offer it to faculty and staff only. There's a number of reasons for that. Our course lasts for about 40 hours. We do this once a week for 5 weeks. So it's a whole day. So for this year, we did every Tuesday for 5 weeks from 8:30 to 4:30. We've kind of expanded on the federal curriculum so that people are more aware of disasters that can affect our unique infrastructure on campus, such as utility emergencies. We've added the utility safety component to the federal curriculum, as well as a number of other things. We host our training once annually, usually in the fall. And like I said, it's 5 weeks, 40 hours. And Clayton, you can talk about Lexington CERT.
Absolutely. So Lexington CERT program runs twice a year, spring and fall. It is 9 weeks long, 1 night a week, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. It is open to anyone who is 18 and older who lives, works, studies, or hangs out a lot in Fayette County. They've been running their program since 2003, 2 classes a year. They're currently on class number 30 right now. And they've got, I believe, they're coming up on 400 trained members throughout the community. And Lexington uses their CERT team a little differently than we here on UK's campus do. Lexington CERT team is also used as preparedness ambassadors for various preparedness events. So if they're going out running outreach booths at things like Masterson Station fair that's out there every year, they'll call out CERT members to assist with that. They've also had a couple of real-world deployments in assisting with medical evacuations where we've been receiving patients in Lexington who've been evacuated from hospitals or in the paths of hurricanes. There is one fully formed neighborhood team in Masterson Station that was formed up as a direct result of the tornado that occurred there in, I believe, 2011. Is that right? It's been a while. But one of the tornadoes I mentioned earlier that occurred within living memory, obviously my memory's not that good, or I'd be able to tell you the date and the year. But past that, Lexington has members distributed throughout the entire community. We do a lot of cross-training with them. Both programs adhere to the core CERT curriculum that is promulgated by FEMA, but both programs also add in their own components based on the needs of their respective constituencies. Laurel talked about some of the additional training that we offer here in Fayette County, or on UK's campus. Fayette County also does some additional training in things like radio communications and hazard awareness specific to that chemical weapons depot down in Richmond, because one of their missions is also to assist at reception centers if there ever is an incident involving that. Both programs also do additional training throughout the year supplemental on a variety of topics, and we trade back and forth on instruction opportunities with that. We've done everything from radio operations to pediatric mass casualty care to damage assessment for structural damage following an event like a flood or a tornado. We've looked at mass sheltering for domestic animals, which has been a big topic in the public safety community since Hurricane Katrina, and has been a headline of it, item in several disasters subsequent to that. And if you can't tell, I'm a huge proponent of CERT. I am a believer in the culture of preparedness. Also, as a public safety professional, I am professionally lazy. The more of you who are prepared to take care of yourselves, the fewer of you I have to worry about taking care of in a disaster. So when I talked about limited resources defining a disaster earlier, the more citizens we have who can fully take care of themselves, the farther those limited resources we have can go in taking care of your neighbors.
A few more comments on CERT. We get a lot of questions about why we don't allow students to take CERT. We always refer them to take the Lexington CERT course. Like I said, we serve as a complement to one another. We meet frequently with the Lexington CERT coordinator. In fact, we're meeting with her and one of our core instructors on Friday for a lunch to talk about opportunities on how to improve the program. And in addition, I wanted to point out the CERT kit that our volunteers, faculty and staff receive once they graduate from the program. You can look at this on your way out. I'm not going to go through all the things that are included in the CERT kit, but it's a variety of personal preparedness, personal protective equipment, and other items such as like a wound and sprain kit and those types of things. What else was I going to say about CERT? We just came off of Class 5, so we're really excited about CERT and furthering opportunities for other faculty and staff to get involved. And in addition, a lot of our graduates do both programs. They have a lot of unique attributes in them, so that there's enough to entertain you to do both programs. A lot of people ask how their kids can be involved and how their spouses can be involved if they're not affiliated with UK. We send them to the Lexington CERT program. Okay. All right. I think this is our last slide about getting involved. In addition to some of our training opportunities we offer to our CERT-trained faculty and staff volunteers, and I say volunteers loosely. Actually, the CERT team, although it's faculty and staff, it is required for them to have supervisor approval. So anytime that they spend in CERT training or call-outs here on campus is considered paid time. Getting involved. Okay. So we offer some refresher trainings for our CERT folks, such as weather spotter and bleeding control. But in addition, it's important to understand the opportunities that you can expose yourself to, such as first aid and CPR training with like an organization such as the American Red Cross or the American Heart Association. Clayton, you want to talk more about the disaster relief with Red Cross?
Absolutely. So under federal mandate for about a century now, ever since the Spanish influenza pandemic of the 19 teens, the Red Cross has been the United States primary coordinating agency for large-scale disaster relief. Now, they do have a small core of professional staff, but the vast majority of Red Cross personnel resources come from volunteers. Now, the Red Cross in central Kentucky has a few primary missions we see them discharged. First off, they do responder support. If we have fire or law enforcement responders who are out on an incident scene for a long period of time, the Red Cross goes out to assist them with responder rehabilitation, basically taking people offline, getting them fed and hydrated and rested before they need to go back on duty. The Red Cross also handles emergency sheltering, and they have a wide scale of operations they can do. They can handle anything from sheltering for a single family or a few households that have been displaced following a residential fire, to mass sheltering where they can spin up a shelter operation in a middle or high school gymnasium, roll in cots and other prepared supplies, and cater to literally hundreds of people who may have been displaced by a large-scale disaster. The Red Cross also does a wide variety of training and general disaster awareness and preparedness outreach work. If you want to become a first aid or CPR instructor, they are probably a very good avenue for exploring that. They also do lifeguard training for those of you who have teenagers who are going to be looking for summer jobs. That lifeguard certification is required for that. Moving past that, Medical Reserve Corps is a program that is similar to CERT, federally sponsored and locally implemented. Here, Medical Reserve Corps is, I believe, run by Fayette County Health Department. Is that correct, Laurel? Yeah. And Medical Reserve Corps, or MRC, is a volunteer organization for providing medical support in large-scale disasters or in incipient large-scale medical incidents. They look at everything from running special medical functional needs shelters. If you have a large population, such as a nursing home that has been displaced due to a disaster, and those individuals require a higher level of medical care than your general population, to how to run mass vaccination in the event of an outbreak of something like a repeat of last century's influenza pandemic, to reference an earlier example.
So while CCERT is limited to our faculty and staff, I wanted to touch on a number of opportunities to get involved for the whole community. Lexington, as well as UK, has a Citizens Police Academy. UK offers theirs twice a year. That's usually done in the evenings, and it's open to the community. It's done right here in this room, actually. We also host active shooter trainings with our Community Affairs Division. Officer Saylor, Alan Saylor, provides active shooter trainings and can come to your department individually, provide training to your whole department or a couple of individuals. And we also, UK Police also offers STAR, Self-Defense Tactics and Risk Reduction, to females in the community. I think you have to be 13 maybe or older. A lot of mother-daughter duos, a lot of friend groups, sororities like to do this STAR training, and they offer that more frequently. And I would urge you to check the UK Police website for upcoming training dates on STAR. I believe that's also offered in the evenings. I didn't touch on Fire Academy.
So the Citizen Academy programs are slightly different from a lot of the other stuff we've talked about here. Things like Medical Reserve Corps, CERT and CCERT, and Red Cross Disaster Relief Volunteering are designed to teach you how to be your own first responder or to get you involved in being part of the solution. Citizens Police Academy and Citizens Fire Academy programs are more of outreach programs to make you familiar with what the professional responder communities do in both their daily operations and in less frequent emergencies. In the case of the Citizens Police Academy programs, you get to there is one session dedicated to each of the major disciplines within law enforcement, each of the major assignments, everything ranging from patrol to homicide investigation to canine operations. You get to do a fair amount of hands-on stuff with them. For example, when UKPD does traffic stop night, they'll pull in a couple of vehicles out on one of the sidewalks here, and you'll get to practice the motions of making a traffic stop and making contact with unknown subjects in a vehicle. Citizens Fire Academy is very similar in that Lexington Fire Department runs this as an outreach program to teach people what the fire department does. And again, there is a night devoted to every major assignment within the fire department. And guys, Captain Matlock's not going to like me saying this, but the Citizens Fire Academy program is a lot cooler than the Citizens Police Academy. The reason why is that if you do Citizens Fire Academy on rescue night, you get to go down to Bluegrass Towing's yard, put on the personal protective equipment, get out the hydraulic cutters, and dismantle a car. I mean, nothing but love for our canine officers. Hard to compare to taking a car apart yourself, right? So, but all of them are awesome programs. We've got a lot of people who come through both Lexington's Citizen Police Academy and our Citizen Police Academy, as well as doing Lexington's Citizen Fire Academy. All of those programs are run multiple times a year. I encourage you to check out the scheduling on the respective websites of those organizations. And the last thing we're going to talk about in involvement is functioning as a preparedness ambassador, because regardless of which of these programs you do, or if you don't do anything and all you do is come away from today's lesson with a renewed sense of confidence and preparedness, what we're asking all of you to do is to try to promote what we call a culture of preparedness. This is a concept that came out of the Federal Emergency Management Agency a few years ago, and the intent at its core is that over the past couple of generations, we as a culture have started to lose touch with the idea of being responsible for our own safety and taking care of ourselves. witnessed the results of our last campus safety and security survey that Laurel mentioned earlier. So what we're trying to do is to get everybody to take ownership for their own safety, recognize that we're going to do the best job we can for you in an emergency, but there may be situations in which we can't get to you or we don't know you need our help. And in those cases, it's going to be on you to be the help until outside help gets there, to take care of yourselves, to take care of your family members, and to take care of your neighbors. And that is how we get back to being a resilient nation that is capable of recovering from whatever happens to us.
Okay, I know your dinner time looks like this, doesn't it? Everyone's smiling, enjoying the food that you prepared for them. Mine doesn't look anything like this. But my point is, incorporate all the 4 concepts that we've talked about today in your daily lives. Talk about it at dinner, in the car, on your commute, on your way to soccer practice. Practice these things with your multiple generations in your family, whether you have elderly parents or grandparents, teenage children or young children. We want you to talk about these things daily. And in summary, we've hoped that you leave here today with a little better sense on being informed, making a plan, building an emergency kit, and getting involved. We have a number of literature in the back that can generate some discussions with your family, and we are also open to any questions that you might have. Oh, weather radios. Are we going to do a drawing right now?
You want to?
Yes. Can you?
How about we don't do a drawing until you give us 3 questions?
Sure. All right, let's get some questions. Any questions about UK programs or UK Alert? Yeah. It's okay. If you can't make it work, I'll try to summarize it on here. Okay. They can't find a weather radio that works. Unfortunately, we cannot supply weather radios. The reception doesn't work. Okay. Are you like in the middle of a building or in the basement? King building. Okay. I guess my recommendation would be to put it on an upper floor near an exterior wall. And hopefully we have in our building emergency action plans and our BEAT plans, which every building should have, there are building coordinators and there should be floor coordinators who can hopefully spread those kind of announcements out to the rest of a building.
Look, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, also, do you guys have cell service? Pretty good cell service in your building? It's iffy. Well, for redundancy purposes, get as many people in your office to make sure that they have their alerts turned on, not only UK Alert, but also the weather alerts. Tornado warnings will come through. Everybody remember the test that went out a few weeks ago? They called it the presidential test. That's called an iPause system. Some of your phones, you might get like flood warnings and things of that nature on them. If they're turned on, you can turn on whatever alerts you want within your phone, whichever phone you have, whether it's an iPhone or a Droid, and those will come through there as well as far as weather alerts. So as many people as possible in your area have those on, and they're able to get those. The other thing about weather that I'll tell you is being weather aware, making sure that you have either an app or a widget on your phone that basically tells you what the weather is that day. If there's expected thunderstorms or expected severe weather, it'll be on that app and it'll let you know, and that way you can just be aware of what's going on. And so it's not, because some people just go around oblivious to what the weather is each day, right? But if you can stay weather aware, that's important.
Any other questions? Yes. There you go.
Okay, so I work over in the hospital, and for my department, if I wanted to have somebody come over and do training about just emergency preparedness or fire, I mean, we're supposed to have, I guess, different fire, I don't say chiefs or whatever for each floor.
We have the UK Fire Marshal office that we partner with.
Okay, so who would I contact to set up some training for our department?
Well, we would be glad to do some general preparedness training, but we might also invite the UK Fire Marshal to come with us if you have specific questions about fire and evacuation.
Okay.
Any other comments about hospital operations, Tom?
Just send an email to us, cmp@uky.edu, and we'll coordinate it for you.
We're
Get you in touch with the right people.
We are glad to offer any type of training on any of the subjects that you've seen here, or something more broad like what we've done today to individual departments. We do that quite frequently, actually. Do we have any online questions?
One question. Apps. Do you have any apps that you recommend for weather alerts?
Okay, so I am directly subscribed to the National Weather Service's alerting system, so I don't have separate apps that I use for alerts. However, I will say for general weather monitoring, NOAA Weather Radar is the best one that I've found. It's one of the freemium apps. You can get it ad supported for free, or you can pay them a small fee to get rid of the ads. It gives you very, very accurate weather radar, as well as local conditions and local forecasts. Captain, any other recommendations from you, sir?
Yeah, I recommend WeatherBug. WeatherBug. It's the great thing about WeatherBug is it provides you distance of a lightning from your position. So if you have your positioning turned on your phone, it will tell you where the closest radar strike to you is. So a lot of times with tornadoes and things of that nature, you will have lightning as well. Lightning kills people every year. It's important to know not to be outside when there's lightning in the area. And this app is great for that. And also AccuWeather. AccuWeather is one of the best weather, at least that I've seen over the years, as far as prediction of weather. They do a really good job, much better than the Weather Channel, just so you know.
Okay, one more question, then we'll do our drawings for the weather radios. John, microphone, please, sir. There you go. Yep.
Okay.
Yep, you're live.
For apps, I would recommend FEMA directly because I use it. And a lot of times I get the message on my phone before it ever hits TV.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Okay, so at this time we're going to do two drawings, one for our in-house guests and one for our remote audience. Laurel, if you would please care to give us a drawing for one of our folks in the room. And the winner of a free weather radio is Maggie Bond. Maggie, please come up and claim your prize in front of the cameras.